knows how to play into their strengths and not into their weaknesses.
So John Maxwell, I mean,
Yeah.
wow, he's made this leadership empire,
Yeah.
basically, and he knows what he's good at, communications, stuff like that, and so that's what plays. So he talks about in one part of the book, wherever, how he's really bad at administrative tasks. And at first he tried to do them himself, and he was like, I can't do this. So from now on, every time he goes somewhere, he has other people do those that like it and are good at it.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's built.
Yeah.
If you look at his leadership career, not that I don't think he's awesome at to do, but I mean, he was a minister of a church for a little while, and it wasn't a huge church.
Right.
And then he started a leadership organization. Well, now he's in charge of a really big leadership organization, but other than that, I mean, he starts writing this leadership stuff, but how much leadership experience did he have initially?
Right.
And some,
Yeah.
but he knew his strengths.
Yeah. He knew the strengths and played into them well. You're right.
I'm gonna vote for this guy right here. Sort of gonna talk about it on the way here. So I've observed him because he is, so we did the assessment. He is somebody who likes to get things done. Like, he likes to get things done, and he can delegate pretty well, which is why we were late, because he delegated a task to me. But he demonstrates leadership to our family, our kids, and
Yeah.
I really admire that about him.
Awesome.
I hate her.
There you go. Hey, if a good question comes up, let it, you know.
I have a mentor of mine that she used to be kind of like a coach with me, and then now I work with her actually. And she just has a way of like, I think she helps influence decisions by asking a lot of like clarifying questions and gets you to really think to make decisions. And so I think that she uses that strength as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember at a church I worked at, there was a senior pastor and executive pastor, and they were like yin and yang, but they worked so well because they were so different. Like where the senior pastor was very outgoing and was just very sociable and out there, and like the executive pastor was very administrative, list, Excel spreadsheets, and like everything. And like together, like they're like, you know, so different, but they knew what their strengths and weaknesses are. Where like Tom, the executive pastor, is like, I don't teach well. I used to be a youth pastor, but I don't like preaching that much. I like the administrative side. I like the financial side. And Troy on the other side, he's like, I hate doing anything that has paperwork, stuff like that. I'd much rather just get out and be with people. So it was cool to see how those two would work together, and just so different, opposite of each other. Last chance. Anyone else want to share a way that you observe or seen people use their strengths? All right. Well, David, you ready?
Ready. You go next one. All right, so we're gonna talk about leading from strength tonight. And I think in one way, in some ways, this might be the toughest thing we talk about, because the first thing you have to do if you want to lead from your strength is know yourself. And that is something that is not always fun, right? Knowing yourself means that you have to know the good and the bad. And what most of us struggle with is we don't like to acknowledge the good about ourselves because we want to be humble. And that's not a bad thing, but we don't give ourselves enough credit. But also, we acknowledge some of the bad, but we're not really willing to go really deep into the weaknesses to say, well, yeah, I see how me doing these things or me being this way or my proclivity towards this really is a liability for me in life and leadership. So hopefully tonight we can explore some of this. And I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know if you guys have noticed, it seems like every week I talk longer and longer. and so I'm going to try not to do that, but we're going to really fly through some stuff tonight, okay? So we're going to go really fast because some of it is just, I'm going to throw it out to you and leave it for you guys to look at later, okay? And I'll send you the PDF of all the slides so you can do that. But we're going to start by talking about assessments, because you guys did an assessment, right? How many of you did the DISC? Wow. I am so impressed by you guys. It's a room full of C's. not really. So that cool, great. So before we dive into talking about assessments, a couple warnings, okay? Warning number one, assessments never tell the whole story of a person, okay? And they never tell the whole story of you. And so you want to be careful not to pigeonhole yourself, not to pigeonhole others by an assessment. You should never weaponize assessments, okay? It can be really easy sometimes, like if you're in a working relationship or a marriage relationship or any other kind of relationship with someone, to be like, well, you're a D, and that's why you're behaving this way, right? That's weaponizing it. You don't ever want to weaponize assessments. Finally, understand that you can change. Most assessments, if you take them one day and you take them another day, you might get a different score, depending on where you're at, what's going on around you, that kind of thing. So it's actually a helpful thing to take assessments, not every day. What am I today? But you know, every so often, just kind of update it, and I'll talk a little bit about some of my assessments as we go, and you'll see how I'm a flip-flopper. I'm a flip-flopper in the Myers-Briggs, and I'm a flip-flopper on the DISC. I know what my flip-flops are. We'll talk about that as we go. So just remember, assessments are helpful. They're a tool, but they have to serve us. We don't serve them. So don't serve these assessments. Let's talk about a couple. We'll start with Myers-Briggs, and how many of you guys are familiar with Myers-Briggs? This is a pretty common one. It's another one you can do for free on the internet. You go on the internet, you do it, get a free one, and do it. Basically, the way Myers-Briggs works is there's these 4 different things that it looks at: extroversion versus introversion, sensing versus intuition, thinking versus feeling, judging versus perceiving. I am an NTP always. Those 3, I'm always, and then just depends on the day whether I'm E or I. And it probably has to do with, like, if I took this on a Sunday afternoon, I'd be like super I, right? And if I've been off for a couple of days, I'm probably an E. So I flip-flop back and forth. But the Myers-Briggs is a good test. It's a long-standing test. It's the test of time. A lot of people use it. So it's a good one. Next one. What's the next one, Lincoln? StrengthsFinder. How many of you guys have ever done StrengthsFinders? So StrengthsFinder has 34 total strengths. And usually it will tell you what your top 3 are. But they all fall into 4 categories. So this is interesting because we're going to see this number 4 several times. There are executing strengths. For example, the achiever and the discipline. So that's people who make things happen. There are influencing strengths. Communication. I have no idea what woo is. And I've read all the material and I've learned about it and it's like, what is that? I don't know. I don't have it, obviously. Relationship building. Okay, how much did you guys read about the DISC? A little bit? You guys all a little? See, my temptation whenever I do stuff like this, I want to say, okay, so this is like the D, and this is like the I, and this is the S. But they're not complete perfect matches. And then strategic thinking, people who analyze, it's like the C. The learner and the analytical, okay? Anybody has done this, know what your strengths are? Just out of curiosity?
I know I'm woo. I know I'm
Wait,
strategic.
what is that?
I think it's just like you literally look woo, like you cheer people on, like you're like, you love,
Oh.
like, woo.
Is that really what it is?
I think so, yeah. But I know that's one of my.
You have added value to my life. All right, go on.
Something with strategy. I'm trying to remember everything. Oh man, I can't remember everything of what
Okay.
it is, but I know woo was on there because
All
when
right.
I said that I was like,
That's
okay,
awesome.
I
That's
love
awesome.
it.
All right, cool. So if you do the StrengthsFinder, I don't know if there's a free StrengthsFinder. Maybe there is. But if you do the StrengthsFinder assessment, you'll get like your 3 high ones. And my guess is usually you'll have 2 in one category and 1 in another category, which is a lot like the DISC, right? Where you have one that's your super high and one that's your next high. All right, what's our next one? Leadership styles. So this comes out of a book by Mark Murphy entitled Leadership Styles. It's a pretty good book. And again, you see there's 4, he groups you into 4 different kinds of leaders. The pragmatist, the idealist, the steward, and the diplomat. And so again, if you want to play with the DISC, it's probably DICS. Okay, if you care about that stuff. It's a good book. If you're really into this kind of stuff, if you're like, I want to know more about myself, I want to learn more about myself, this is a really helpful book. I listened to it last week, and it was helpful for me just in thinking through how I communicate with other people. Because that's one of the things he does a really good job talking about is I'll fall some here and some here. No, I'm sorry, not here. Some here and some here. But a lot of me is here. And so it's helpful for me to think about, okay, so as a pragmatist, how do I communicate with an idealist, especially when we're not on the same page? And that's an important thing to understand. So this is a good book. I highly recommend it. One more that is actually not an assessment, but it comes with an assessment, is the People Model. And this is from a book called Leadership Above the Line by Sarah Sumner. I briefly mentioned this just off the cuff last time we were together. I really recommend this book. It's good for leaders, because it's a leadership book, but it's just good for everybody. And we're going to actually talk more about this near the end of our time tonight. But the People Model, so she only has 3 different kinds of people. And it's interesting why. You have to read the book to really grasp what she's all about. She's trying to create a very biblical model of how to communicate, problem solve, and deal with conflict. That's what she's trying to do. And she thinks that the best 3 ways to do this are these 3. And you can see they're tied to biblical virtues of truth, love, and peace. But essentially, we'll talk more about this as we go. All right, let's get to the DISC. Shall we get to the DISC? The DISC model, I changed this word. This is, you guys all know it's dominant, right, most of the time. But the DISC is flexible, depending on, whose version you're using. I don't like dominant because I'm kind of a D. So I don't want people to think I'm a dominant. So I like the word decisive. The word direct is another good word there. But so dominant, decisive, direct, influencing. I don't like the word compliant. I actually think it's a bad word for this one, because when you think of compliant, you think of somebody who never has an opinion. That's actually not what it means at all. So I changed it to compliance, because the C is more likely to demand compliance. That's more what they're, and they love to comply with the rules. And then steadiness, these are your peacekeepers, that kind of thing. So before we dive into talking about the DISC, well, wait, should we talk more about it? Let me talk a little bit more about it, and then we'll talk about who we are. Sound good? Let's go to the next slide, Lincoln. So when you think about the DISC, a great way to think about it is to just draw 2 lines, one going this way, one going this way. Your line this way deals with how you feel about people, okay? And so if you're up at the top, you're an outgoing person, right? So extroverted, really like to do things. If you're at the bottom, you're more reserved. You don't really have to be around people. You're more introverted. So if you're doing the Myers-Briggs, you have your E and your I there. So what that means is essentially, if you're a high D or a high I, you probably like being around people, or you care a lot about what people think, that kind of thing. If you're a high C or a high S, then you're like, yeah, I'm okay to be by myself. And some of you are like, wait a minute, I'm like a high I and a high S, how does that work? Well, it just means you're somewhere in the middle, but that means this line is probably more helpful for you. And so let's go to that line. This line has more to do with, are you more task-oriented or people-oriented? So, I am uber task-oriented. You hear me talk in church about my lists. I have lists of my lists. I love lists. I have bullet points everywhere. That's because all of my high stuff is on this side. So I am all task oriented, which is funny because I'm a pastor. You would think I would be more people oriented, but that's not how God made me. So one more slide, Lincoln. A great way to think about this is what the DISC helps us understand is, how do I deal with problems? So if I'm a D or a C, I run to problems. I'm a problem solver, right? If I'm an I or an S, I don't love problems, because problems make people unhappy and problems break up the peace. So I don't really love them if I'm an I or an S. But if I get to work with people, woohoo, right? That's awesome. Now, if I'm over here, I don't really like to work with people, right? Up here, pace. We just went with pace because we have all P words, right? So we have to do that. This is like change. Like, do you like to change, or do you change quickly? Are you able to change quickly? So if you're a D, you're decisive, so you like to change quickly. If you're an I, hey man, where's the crowd going? Let's go, right? Or let's be excited together. So you don't mind change at all. If you're a C, it's like, hey man, wait a minute, we've got rules, and there's a reason for the rules. Or if you're a S, you're like, I don't want to change things too fast because I don't want anybody to get left behind. I want to make sure everybody's taken care of. Okay? And then process, again, if you're down here, you love processes. Like, again, this is the order, these are the list, this is how we're going to do this. Okay? The reason we love processes if we're an S is because processes give us something to unite around. And we want to unite people. If you're a D, it's like, I don't need a process, I've got intuition. Right? I know what I'm doing. Let's go. Let's do it. And if you're an I, it's like, process, who cares? Are you happy? Let's just make everybody happy. Okay, so that's the disc. Now, having walked through, who wants to share what you are? I'm not going to make everybody share, but if you want to share, so the easiest way to do it is say, if you're above, if you can look at your percentages, and I think the test you guys did, all your percentages add up to 100. Is that right? So you're looking for the top 2 usually, unless there's one that's like way above. Like if you're 70% and then everything else is 10, then you just have 1 letter. You don't get 2 letters. Some of you have 1 letter, some of you have 2 letters, some of you might have 3 letters. All right? So, all right. Dan.
Decisive and influence.
All right, so you are a DI. Are you, D is your highest, and then I is second, so
It's,
DI?
40%, 39%.
Okay, so you're really high. Okay, so not a lot down here. Okay, all right, cool. Who else?
I'm the same as him.
You're the same.
Almost 44 D and 37 influence.
Okay, this is going to be so fun what we're about to do.
So I am 42 compliance, and I'm 29 dominance and 24 steadiness. I think that they should be reversed though.
Okay, so you're either a CDS or a CSD.
Yes.
Okay, all right, cool. All right, James, what are you?
Similar to that. That'd be I guess, SDC.
What's that?
Like a SDC.
Okay, so isn't that fun? It's so weird how that happens. Now I know you guys have a different kind of mix, right?
We're kind of the same.
Yes. What are you guys?
50% down.
You're 50%. Okay.
And then the next one is influence at 26.
26. Okay. What about these two?
Steadiness 13, compliance 11.
All right. So you're really almost just a high D, right? We could throw the I on if you want, but you're really a high D.
And I am 46% D, 32% I, 16% steadiness, and 6% compliance.
Yeah, the two have become one. So well done. All right. So you're both DI.
We're the
Okay.
same person.
All right. We got a lot of DIs in here. That's interesting. All right. What else? Anybody else?
I'm an SI.
You're an SI.
Yeah, 38 S and 29 I.
All right. And what do you do at work?
I'm a maintenance supervisor.
You're a supervisor. You like keeping people together. That
And I solve problems.
You solve problems. There you go. All right. Good. Good. Somebody else. Anybody else?
I was 45 steadiness, 34 compliance, so I'm reserve. I mean, the 2 bottom, and then only 9 D and 15.
All right. All right. So you're an SC. Okay. Anybody else want to share?
Steadiness at 37% and influence at 25% with compliance right behind it at 23.
Okay. All right. So you're an SIC. That's sick, man. All right. All right. Yeah, I know, right? All right. Everybody else?
On video.
I am S, 40%, dominant 33, compliance 19, and influence 8.
All right. So an SD mostly with a sprinkle of C.
SD.
All right. Awesome. Good. All right. What's funny is I would have guessed a lot of those just through our interactions. You kind of get to know somebody, you kind of know what they are. Anybody else want to share before we move on? All right. You good? Okay, cool.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Could you be something else in like a situation that you have to be? Like in certain situations I have to be outgoing, so
Yep.
I am, but it's not that I am. Does that make sense?
Yes,
So
that
some
is-
people think I'm very outgoing, but I'm not.
So that is such a good question. So we don't have time to go into this.
Sorry.
But no. It's a great question, and this will unpack the whole DISC thing more. And this is one of the reasons why DISC is my favorite of all the assessments. So when you do a real DISC assessment, like you have to pay for it, you actually get 3 result charts. The first result chart is how you change yourself for your environment. So they actually will tell you when you take the test in the mindset of the environment for which you're taking the test. So we did this for our leadership team a while back, and I said, I want you to do this in your church mindset. So if you did it in your school mindset, that first chart would show this is who you think you need to be at school. Okay, that's what the first chart shows. The last chart shows, they kind of call it the real you, but it's not really the real you, it's the real you as you think you are the real you, because that an assessment can only measure what you think about yourself. Maybe it's what you don't really know you think about yourself, but it measures the real you. And then the middle chart, which it actually kind of splits the difference, but it shows the you that you become when you're under stress. So it's really helpful to look at the three and see, okay, so yes, like sometimes, so if I'm doing the test, in this first window, I am going to be a high D. If I'm doing this, especially if I'm doing the test for work. Because part of my, just who I have to be at work, I've got to be the decision maker, even though I would naturally, if you go to my third chart, I'm going to be high C before high D, because that's who I actually am, all right? And then where I am in between can just get kind of ugly sometimes. And what's interesting, I don't want to go too deep into this, what you can see sometimes in a person's chart is when you get the results, it's like a graph like this, okay? So you get 4 points on the graph, and I think it goes D, I, S, C. Yes, it spells disc, right? So I'm a check mark, that's what I am. That's me. But when you look at those graphs, you'll see sometimes somebody will have almost a flat line, or it'll be just a little bit of motion. And what that tells you is this is a person who's in transition. Like there's something going on in their life that they're trying to figure out who they are. And so it's like, hey, I'm looking at this test and I see the results are like this. Let's talk about that a little bit. So it's really a fascinating test. Yeah. If you guys ever want to take the actual real one, I can help you with that, but I have to charge you $50 because that's what it costs me to get the assessments. All right, but what's the next slide, Lincoln?
1 Corinthians 12.
All right, let's not go there then. All right, let's stay here just for a second. As you guys think about this assessment of yourself, what are you learning? What are you thinking about? Like, where's your mind at about yourself? Anything that you're like, oh, this is interesting, or I don't know what this guy's talking about. Why is he going on like this? What are you thinking?
Well, you said the people with the red yellow are flexible, and I'm red yellow, and I am not.
Okay.
Something changes and you roll with it. But honestly, if I have my schedule, unless there's a really good reason, I don't want it to change.
Yeah.
And then I have to deal with the change in my head, because
Right.
once it's in my head, I mean, it's just hard.
Are you a higher D than I?
Yes.
Okay. So flexible might not be the best word.
Definitely not.
So it's change. Like a D can change quickly. That doesn't mean they're flexible. It means you come to your decision fast. Like you see the situation, you're able to really quickly make an evaluation, and then you make your change and you go. That's I think the difference.
Okay.
The I is more of a, hey, let's go with the group, let's whatever's gonna make people happy, I'm okay with that. But if you're driven by your D, then you're really gonna be someone who's like, I look at the situation, I assess it, I make a decision, and I go, right? These guys down here are just much slower to change, because this guy's gotta think every single issue through. Like, you gotta settle every detail before you go, and this person is, well, I don't want the conflict that comes with change. So that's why they're slower to change. So, all right. Other thoughts, questions on this? Okay. What do you guys think Jesus would land on these? Perfect? Perfect? So he'd be a CD. What do you guys think?
25% everything.
25% everything?
DI.
You think he'd be a DI?
Or DIC.
I don't know, he's gotta be a C because he's very compliant.
He's about the rules.
He's
But he isn't.
Well, he
He's about love.
He's never did anything wrong.
Right, that's right.
So
He fulfilled the law.
He's very compliant, because he never has did anything wrong in his
I
life.
think the Pharisees would disagree with you.
Right.
I was thinking the perfect being, Jesus, would be very adaptable situationally. He could be any one of those things to exception depending on what's in front of him. Without, other people, we might be able to change a little bit, but we struggle because we're stuck in one, where him, it would just flow
Yep.
easily.
That is a great answer, because here's the truth to remember. You all have something in every box, right? You have the ability to be decisive when you need to be. That may not come naturally to you, but you have it. You have the ability to be a people person if you need to. It might not come naturally, but you can do it. And I think that's a great assessment that Jesus knew when to be what he needed to be. And he had the ability, like obviously more than we do, because this is, I think, probably all impacted by sin, right? And we're going to talk more about that as we go. But I think, Jesus had the ability to read a situation and know what he needed to be. So when he's like turning over the tables in the temple, he's like up here, right? But when he's sitting with the woman at the well, he's like right here, isn't he? Because he's a people person and he's bringing peace to her life. But then other times he's with the disciples and he's down here because he's laying out for them, guys, this is what you need to know. We're going to do some heavy duty teaching time. So he exhibits stuff all over the place, which is awesome. And a good reminder to us that we should never just be like, well, this is just the way I am. Okay? It's not okay for me to like yell at Andrew in a meeting and then be like, sorry dude, I'm a D. Right? What are you? I mean, I know, but I don't know.
Well, we don't have percentages.
No, you guys just got the graph.
Which graph do you want?
Well, just tell me your two highs.
I and C, S.
I and S?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is fascinating on our leadership team. I am the only C. And when I discovered this, it was like this moment of zen, right? It's like, this is why I get frustrated. None of them want to follow the rules. We got a bunch of people, and we got a bunch of decisive people, but none of them want to follow the rules. That's why I got to be the one that makes sure the rules get followed. So, all right, let's move on. Let's talk about the other side of knowing ourselves. So this is kind of knowing who we are. Let's talk about what it looks like to know what we have, and I want to just talk about spiritual gifts for a second. So we'll go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And you guys have probably heard this verse. Now, there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of service, but the same Lord. So whenever we study the Bible, one of the things we look for is key words, right? And one of the ways we know a word is a key word is if it's repeated. So same and same. So that probably matters. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who empowers them all and everyone. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. So you got the word same that appears 3 times. You've got this concept of common good. You've got to each is given. And then you got everyone here. What jumps out at us in this passage before anything else is unity, right? Oneness, togetherness, sameness, right? We're all together. The whole point here is what Paul is saying is God gives us these gifts for unity, which is fascinating. He makes us different so we can be together. And what we often do in our humanity is say, well, we only want to be together with the people who are like us, right? We only want to be together with the people who are the same as us. And what Paul is saying here is, no. We all have what? Varieties, but the same, right? Varieties, but the same. Varieties, but the same. This is fun stuff. So what he's saying is, look, everybody has a gift. Now, you guys can read all of 1 Corinthians 12 on your own. And he does this fun thing with the body. He says, if the ear says, well, why can't I be the foot? That kind of stuff. And it's fun. But the whole point is, everybody's got different gifts. And we all have those different gifts for a different purpose. But at the end of the day, they're all for the purpose of the church being united to the glory of God. Now, in 1 Corinthians 12 and 14, as well as Ephesians 4, Romans 12, and 1 Peter 4, we have lists of spiritual gifts. And if we give you one big list, we'll go to the next slide, Lincoln. We have one big list. These are all of the gifts that are named in all of those passages that I just said. Okay? So take just a minute. I want you to look at this and ask yourself the question, do I see any gifts up here that God has given to me? Okay? This is not a trick question, but it is a little bit. So go ahead and look at it and just ask yourself, is there anything up there? Do I see myself? Is there something that God has given to me? All right. What happens if I look at this chart and say, I don't see myself up there? Does that mean that God hasn't given me a spiritual gift? So I grew up in a faith tradition that basically said, these are the gifts, right? And there were lots of other funny things they said about the gifts, but these are the gifts, and everybody has one of these. And I'd be like, I don't know. I mean, eventually I came to a place where I was like, well, you know, maybe I have the gift of, you know, teachers. Maybe that's me. But I mean, there's a lot of people who look at these and say, well, I don't see myself. I think it's important for us to understand that every time the gifts are listed, they're listed differently. Okay, so this is comprehensive. But 1 Corinthians 12 lists different gifts than Romans 12 does. And 1 Peter 4 lists different gifts than Ephesians 4 does. And they even list them in different ways and in different orders. And I think that's really important, because I think what the New Testament authors are trying to tell us is these are examples. This is not a comprehensive list. These are examples. I think actually a better way for us to think about spiritual gifts, rather than trying to find a list and say, where do I find myself in here, is to say, my spiritual gifts are everything that God has given me. So one of my favorite parables is Matthew 25, parable of the talents, right? The main point of the parable is everything you have has been given to you by God, and you should use it the way He would use it. That's what spiritual gifts are. Anything that God has given to you is His gift to you, and He wants you to steward it well. So, in that tone, let's go to the next slide. Let me give you 6 ways to think about what God has given to you. This is close to comprehensive. God has given you a power, a superpower. He's given you abilities, right? Talents and abilities. And we all have different abilities, but God has given you abilities. God's given you a personality. We just spent a lot of time talking about our personalities and all of these different assessments to help us understand who we are and the way we are. God has given you passions, like things you get excited about and things you get angry about. If you want to really know what you're passionate about, ask yourself what you get frustrated about. Because whatever you get frustrated about is probably what you're most passionate about. So what I love to do when people come to me and they're like, I'm really frustrated about something happening in the church. I'm like, awesome, you're passionate about this. Let's solve it together, right? So whatever you're passionate about is often what you're frustrated about. God has given you possessions. Anything you have, God has given to us. So this is a fun one. How do I think this through? What are the possessions I have that God has given to me that He wants me to use for His kingdom? Like, can I really use my car for God's kingdom? How can I do that? Can I use my house for God's kingdom? Can I use my golf clubs for God's kingdom? Yes. So I mean, you guys went kingdom building last night. You took a bunch of young guys out, and that's awesome. Yeah. All right. God has given you a past, and here's one. I wish we could spend a lot of time here, but we can't. Everything in your past, God could use for good in the future, and don't miss that. That even the hard stuff in your past, God can use for good. So for this Sunday, for this Sunday is Move Out Sunday, right? So I've been doing a little bit of going back in time and trying to figure some things out, just to see if there's any kind of cool things we can talk about. And actually, most of you, this won't mean anything to, but this Sunday is June 8th, right? June 9th of 2013 was John Jackson's last Sunday at the gathering. The next Sunday was my first. And so we're almost exactly 12 years later to the dot, which is kind of cool because when I go down that path, I'm like remembering back to those days, and those were crazy days. I actually found an email that I wrote to a bunch of my friends in Michigan after I took the job here. I'd been here for 3 weeks, and I said, hey guys, just so you know, this is where I'm at. Because there were some things going on that we couldn't tell people in Michigan that I was candidating at this church down here, because this sounds terrible, there were people in Michigan who would have called the church and tried to convince them not to hire me. And we knew that was true because it had already happened 3 or 4 times. And so we didn't even tell our best friends that we were interviewing them. So anyways.
Is that what happened to your school job?
What's that?
You said you were getting offered.
That's all
job.
tied together.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's my past. Now here I am 12 years later, and I can look back and say, man, God has redeemed that and has given it to me as a gift, and I can use it for others. So possibilities. You have opportunities waiting for you. And remember our cone of opportunity last week, good choices lead to more opportunities, but God gives all of us opportunities that we can use for Him. All right, so everything you have has been given to you by God, and He wants you to use it as you can. So here's go to the next slide, Lincoln. Here's where we're going to wrap this up. To know yourself, you must know who you are and what you have. So remember where we started. If I want to lead from my strength, the first thing I have to do is know myself. Now, I promise we're not going to take as long on grow ourselves and control ourselves, but I have to know myself, and that means being willing to do the hard work of assessing myself and saying, who am I really, and what does that mean, and how does that impact me? Like so I'm a high C and a high D. There's some really good things about that. There's also some struggles that go with that. I don't have a lick of S in me, and that can be a problem because I need to be a peacemaker. That's what God has called me to be. And so I've got to really struggle with that. But if I don't know that about myself, like if I'm a high D and I don't know that about myself, I'm going to run people over. Okay? And this is the other side of that, right? If I'm a high S and I don't know that about myself, I'm going to get run over. And so both of those are really important. So you must know who you are and know what your spiritual gifts are. All right? I hope you guys will chew on this a little bit more and run with it. Let me show you why this matters. We'll go to the next slide. This is just really quick. I think this is fun. All right. When you lead others, the only way for you to lead other people is for them to know you and you to know them. All of us, we have 3 pieces of us. We have the piece of us that is who we are and we know it and other people know it too. And then we have this piece of us that you can call the mask. This is what I hide from everybody, okay? Nobody knows this about me. And, if they don't know it about me, then I can't lead them with this part of me. Does that make sense? If I never tell anybody about my past doesn't help me lead. That's under my mask. And we all have these blind spots, right? Things that everybody else might know about us, but we don't know about ourselves, or things we haven't discovered about ourselves. Like, what does it mean that I'm a CD, and how does that impact me? So as long as I look like this, my ability to lead is a lot smaller. But if I work hard, go to the next slide, Lincoln. If I work hard to shrink the mask and shrink the blind spots by doing the hard work of saying, who am I, right? What has God given to me? That really expands my ability to lead. So that's why we're talking about this. Let's move on to grow yourself. We're going to move quickly through this. Growth requires intention and action. We've talked a lot about growth. We've talked a lot about intentionality. So I don't feel like we need to spend as much time here. I think the big idea here is growth never happens by accident. Right? We talked about this last week. Growth doesn't happen by accident. You have to be intentional. You have to choose, and you have to act. So if I want to grow myself, I have to move from knowing to doing. Okay? So it's not enough to just know myself. Right? I've done the assessment. I know my Myers-Briggs. I know my Strength Finder. I know my Enneagram. I know all this about myself. Great. Okay, now what? So, question for all of us here. How do we take what we've learned about ourselves and do something that's going to help us grow? Like, as you're thinking this through as I'm talking, you guys know, like, the C in me right now is just losing my mind. All right. So, how can we take what we're talking about knowing ourselves and then put something into action to grow? What do you guys think?
Make your weaknesses stronger.
Yeah, right? Make my weaknesses stronger. And what else?
Your strength to balance out.
Yes, but also lean into my strengths, right? That's actually the next thing we'll talk about, is in growth, we want to learn how to lean into our strengths and to lean on others. So this is great. In a marriage, often, not always, but often in a marriage, you'll find two people who are different from each other, and they score different on the test.
We're complete opposite.
Yes, you guys are complete opposites. And you know what? That is awesome, because what can you guys do?
Literally, as you explaining it, both her and I were looking at each other. You used all your examples. I forget them, but he was using the examples, and me and you were looking at each other because it was like, dang, that's me. With my plans change, hey, it is what it is. Let's go, keep it moving. And you're like, no, we gotta follow these rules. We gotta get this check mark. What about the kid? And I'm like, no, it is what it is. Let's go.
Yeah.
So
Well, my dad tried to explain that to us, because my dad, it's gonna sound weird, he's a pastor, he married us, he did our marriage counseling. So he kind of went through this, and I got it. I don't know that he got it as much. But when you're saying it, it clicked even more, and he's the first one I thought of, and I just know that when he was like,
Light bulb.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's what that means for us, though, is when I'm in a partnership with somebody who's different than me, I gotta know when to use my strengths and when to lean on them for their strengths, right? Like, situational awareness is so important here. Like, okay, so I'm in a situation that requires a people person. So I'm gonna shrink into the background, and I'm gonna let Mary Ann step forward, right? Because she's one of her highs is gonna be an I. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let her take the lead in social situations because she's way better at it than I am. Now, when it comes down to like who's gonna, go to the rental counter because they didn't keep our reservation, that's gonna be me. I mean, you know how to take a reservation, but you don't know how to keep the reservation. All right. What's our next?
You gotta do the hand thing.
Yeah. What's our next one, Lincoln? All right. Finally, take action to manage your assets and to manage your liabilities. So, what we've talked about tonight, we haven't really talked about it in this term, is your assets and your liabilities, who you are as a person, right? What you're high on, your high letters, those are your assets. What you're low on, those can be liabilities. We'll talk about in just a second that what you're high on can also be a liability if you don't know how to manage it well. But let me show you how this works for me. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Lincoln. So this is me. Some days I'm a CD, and some days I'm a DC. It just kind of depends on the day. This wheel right here, I'm going to get a better copy of it for you guys for the PDF, so that you can actually see what it looks like. This is a fun wheel because it shows us every single combination in the disc. So I'm a CD, so I'm going to start down here because this is my C quadrant, and find the CD, and the CD I think is right here because this is D, right? So CD is right here, and CD is designer. Now this makes sense, right? Because if I'm going to design something, what do I need? I need to be somewhat decisive, but also I kind of want to be on my own, and I want to get this done. I'm going to follow the rules, and I'm going to design it. Now, if I'm leaning the other way and I'm DC, now I'm the challenger. And do you see where it's such a subtle flip, but it's like now I'm more decisive than I am rules-based. Here I'm rules-based more than I am decisive. And so when I flip to here, now I'm like, you know what? I need to challenge these rules. Now I still got a lot of C in me. So I want there to be rules, but the D in me says, but are these the right rules? And maybe we need to change the rules. So this is where I live most of my life, right? But I want to manage my assets. I want to minimize my liabilities. So I understand that for me, my third letter actually is I, right? And what's fun here is whether it's CDI or DCI, the personality is chancellor. I love that word, right? Does that sound like, okay, that's the guy who oversees things, but he's approachable and he kind of sets the rules, but everybody likes him. Chancellor's kind of a cool thing. And I realized, how do I become a chancellor is what do I have to do? I've got to develop this part of me. I need to develop my people skills. And if I take my DC or my CD, doesn't matter which one, and I add on to that the ability to work with people in a way that's healthy, all of a sudden I have taken my strengths and I really leveled up, okay? And I've minimized some of my weaknesses. So this is a fun chart. And so when I send it out to you, I may send this separately so you can look at it really well. It's a fun exercise to say, okay, I live here, but what's my third one? And when I lean into that, how does that change my ability to lead and my ability to function with people? Which leads us right into the last part of leading from strengths, which is control yourself. Okay, so we start with, you gotta know yourself, you gotta grow yourself. Take what you know and develop it, but you have to control yourself. We're back to Sarah Sumner, Leadership Above the Line. She says, unredeemed strengths are what derail Christian leaders the fastest. We all know like lots of stories about big name Christian leaders who fail, right? Fascinating thing to do is to look at those, try to figure out a little bit about people, see if you can figure out what their profile might be, and then you see it. And it's like, okay, their strengths were run amok. So, how many of you know who Mark Driscoll is? Yeah, the pastor does. Okay, so Mark Driscoll's got my age, he's just a smidge older than me, but he's Gen X. Led this, one of the fastest growing churches in America, probably 20 years ago, out in Seattle. Church exploded, and then it just crashed and bottomed out and fell apart. And there was no moral failing or anything like that. Like a lot of times you hear like a pastor had an affair, there's an abuse scandal. There was no moral failing. Turns out he's just a jerk. Right? So there's a whole podcast on this, which I don't necessarily recommend unless you're curious, because it's not done really well. But they did this whole long podcast on it, which I was interested in because he's my age and we grew up in ministry at the same time. He treated people really bad. So he is D all the time. That's his profile, which was great early on because he was in Seattle and he was confronting the culture, and people were like, "Oh, we love this guy because he steps into this, this craziness that's going on in Seattle, and he's confronting it, and he's a Bible thumper, and he's pounding the pulpit. They're like, we love this guy, but then also we hate this guy because he treats us terrible because he has never redeemed that strength. He uses it for good, and he uses it as a weapon. And here's the challenge for all of us. My strengths are just a hair's width away from a weakness. If I don't use my strengths well, they actually have the potential to become my greatest weakness. And this is what Sarah Sumner's book is all about. Her book, Leadership Above the Line, is all about this. And so let's go to the next slide, Lincoln, and kind of talk through her model. Because I think this is maybe the most helpful thing we'll talk about tonight. So she has three different types of leaders: a strategist, a humanitarian, and a diplomat. And you guys can probably take a minute, find yourself up here, right? So do you live through truth, clarity, and logic? Is that, I love that? Or is that, no, it's love, service, and mercy, right? So if you're a high I or an S, you're probably over here. If you're a high D, you're probably over here. If you're a high C, you're somewhere in the middle. Or, peace, unity, harmony. If you're a high S, this is you, right? So where is it? Now what she says is this: we all have these strengths, but there's this line. And when we get below the line, essentially when we let our old nature rule us, when we begin to use these things for our own good instead of the glory of God, or instead of the good of others, this can lead us into really bad places. So let's go to the next slide. This is where it leads us. If you're a strategist, your biggest struggle is the struggle against pride. Okay? Now, I know I'm talking like really firm with, but that's because I'm a D. So this is your biggest struggle if you're a strategist. It's pride, because I want to be right, I want to be in charge, I want to do this, whatever. And where that leads you is it can lead you into presumption. Like, I know I'm right, and so you must be wrong. I'm going to make assumptions about you, and it often leads to impatience. I read this and I'm just like, oh, that is so convicting, because that is totally me, right? I'm so convinced that I'm right. I immediately figure out where everybody else is wrong, and then I impatiently wait for them to change. Okay? Because that's me. Now, if you're here, your biggest vice, your biggest temptation is fear, right? So people who really struggle with fear, this is why. Because you've got these virtues, but you're living here. And so when you struggle with fear, what's funny here is it often leads into gossip. And we don't want to unpack that for a lot right now, but if you think it through, it makes a ton of sense. Because this person loves people, and one of the ways they try to nurture relationship with people when they're below the line is through gossip. Because in this strange satanic way, gossip is a great uniter, right? And it just is. And then they will often, when they continue below the line, become a martyr, right? Oh, just everybody's out to get me. This is terrible. The diplomat, when they get below the line, deceit. And that's a heavy word. That's Sarah's word, not mine. But manipulation is a great another word for that. It's really easy to fudge the truth, right? So if this is you, and again, this makes so much sense because it's the eternal question. If your wife comes down the steps and says, "Does this dress make me look fat?" What do I say? Right? Well, the strategist says yes, right? Wrongly. The humanitarian, they just don't say a word. They're just like, how about them tigers, right? And the diplomat says, no, it looks great. Okay? And all three are wrong. The correct answer, guys, if that ever happens, is, honey, nothing could ever make you look bad. That is the correct answer. All right. So this person, they will, when they get below the line, fudge the truth, manipulate the truth, kind of tweak the truth. They quickly will descend into politics as well. So here's what we take away from this. I know my strengths. If I'm trying to know myself, so I do assessments, I talk to people, I know what my strengths are. I also need to know where those strengths can lead me if they're not redeemed. Because this is dangerous. I am not, gossip's not an issue for me. I'm just not going to be a gossip. I don't have to worry about that. Fear, not usually a problem for me. I don't have to worry about that. You know, this kind of stuff, no. This, oh man, right? If I let Satan get a foothold, I can get here really quick, and I have to know that about myself. StrengthsFinders does a really similar model, and let's look at that. So we'll go to the next slide. This is what they call balconies and basements. Okay. I don't know if I think that's right. Okay. So what I did is I took some of the StrengthsFinder stuff and I put it into Sarah Sumner's chart just to help us kind of understand what it is. But when they talk about balconies and basements, and so it says here, look, a strategic person sees patterns, possibilities, best paths forward, anticipates obstacles with clarity. Right? If that's you understand that. Analytical brings clarity and, oh wait, I changed these. Okay. I'm confused about my own chart. This is the StrengthsFinders thing. It's very similar to Sarah Sumner's. The analytical person brings clarity and objectivity, asks the right questions, uncovers the truth, the learner, models, curiosity, right? So again, you're going to fit into one of these categories. Now, just like in Sarah Sumner's model, these are your balconies, right? So if you're here, things are really good. But if you're here and you get unredeemed, you let Satan have his way, it's going to lead you into the basement. Let's look at the basement. The basement becomes conceived impatient with ambiguity, dismissive, slower thinkers or processes, right? This person overanalyzed stall decisions. This person stuck in consuming. So for me, again, because I'm a CD, I'm somewhere in between these two. Okay. Oh wait, I understand what I did here now. This is the problem when I do my slides a week before. These are my strengths. I'm showing you guys my strengths. So these are my strengths from the StrengthsFinder, strategic analytical learner. So now you know all of my weaknesses. Okay? So when I'm not, as I'm reading this, I'm like, man, I struggle with all of this. What's going on? This is me. And Andrew, you probably have experienced some of this with me. I'll show you the one I think you experienced the most. I probably don't do this quite as much because this is one of those areas I've worked on really hard in my life, and some of the other ones I've not worked on as hard. This one, I can do this. I can overanalyze and I'll slow things down. People get very frustrated with me sometimes because I move so slow. And we gotta get this right. We gotta get this right. But this one here, again, I love to consume the information. So what do I do?
Middle one.
The middle. Yeah, I just ask questions. Yeah, forever and ever. Yeah. So that because I'm analytical, that can be very helpful, right? If I'm here, this is great. But when I get to here, this is problematic. So again, knowing what you're good at and realizing that the things that I am good at have incredible danger to really bring harm if I don't handle them right, this is helpful. All right, one more verse, Galatians 5:22. Fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. We should pursue the fruit of the Spirit before we pursue the gifts of the Spirit. That's, I mean, we do that, we're gonna be good. These are more important than Myers-Briggs. They're more important than the DISC. They're more important than StrengthsFinder, right? Analytical, strategic, learner, that's great. Way more important to pursue love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, right? These are the strengths we want to build. These are the strengths we want to lean into. So I would say if I was going to build a model, for how to really grow into my strengths, I would say take time every day, every week, every month, however you want, to look at this passage and then reflect on it. Just think about it. Where am I doing well? Where am I not doing well? Decide what needs to change, and then change it. That's it, right? Now, let me close with this. Last slide, Lincoln. Leading from strength is more of a merry-go-round than a ladder. Okay, we started by saying, if you want to lead from strength, you have to know yourself, grow yourself, control yourself, right? If it's a ladder, once I know myself, I move on to grow myself. Once I grow myself, I move on to control myself, and now I'm good and I'm done. But that's not what it is. It's much more of a merry-go-round. I am always saying, okay, I got to learn more about me. Once I learn more about me, I've got to grow more in these areas. And I got to learn how to control what I know. I wish I had figured this out 20 years ago. I would have been a much better leader then if I had known this stuff. Because 20 years ago, I was like, this is who I am, so you guys got to deal with it. And I've learned, and I think one of the reasons why the Gathering hasn't fired me for 12 years is because I have learned how to do this, how to control what I'm good at. And as you guys mentioned earlier, how to give away what I'm bad at, right? And so there are things I'm not good at. You know, one of the reasons we hired Steve, you guys all know Steve, right? There's a reason you all know Steve, right? Because Steve is not a CD. Steve is an I, right? And we knew we needed an I. And so some of you were around when we moved Steve out of his role of youth pastor and into his current role, connections pastor. And he said, David, what's a connections pastor? I said, we're going to make it up. And he said, well, I don't know what it is. I said, I don't either, but it's what you're good at. And so we're going to put you here because you're good at it. And we needed to balance me out. And so that's what we did. And we have tried over the years to hire a staff around me, not like me. And I think that's been really good for the church. Unfortunately, there's no C's, so we're gonna have to fix that. But this is the merry-go-round of leading from strength. All right, Andrew, you ready?
Yeah.
Come and be whatever you are.
Yeah, well, you're so good at following the rules, the rest of us don't have to, so. Just does it for us.
Hey, you're not allowed to talk about this stuff in staff meetings.
I know.
Okay.
It's a secret, I guess.
It is.
It's a rule.
It's a rule. I know it's SIC. C's my, and then D's Fargo. All right, Lincoln, next slide, please. All right, so discussion. Wait, there's a typo here. What can a person do, right? Not how.
Oh, man.
What can a person do in order to keep
That's
their strength
devastating.
from becoming a liability? What did you say?
That's devastating.
That's devastating. All right, so what can a person do in order to keep their strength from becoming liabilities?
First, learn their strengths.
Yeah. First part of the merry-go-round, right? Know yourself.
I used to teach some stuff like this at a Penn University, basically, and it's called a shadow side. So understanding that you might have all these strengths and these different, life happens. So your strengths may be better than, like in these events than other times. There is a shadow side to it. In other words, there's something bad that can happen if you overuse this strength, or you use, like one of my strengths is humor and playfulness. It's very high. But right?
Wait, say that again, you say humor?
Humor, it's, humor and playfulness.
Okay, yeah.
It's very high.
Yeah.
But it also,
He
I have
doesn't
a
follow the rules.
I have a shadow side. I have a shadow side. Like I'm not. It's not a. Every time I can't be playful. I can't use my humor.
Right.
You know. So just understanding all your strengths have a shadow side to it, and if you understand that, you might take that split second to say, before I do this, this is. There's second, third order effects to it.
Mhm.
So just that's what I would say.
I think of Uncle Ben in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility.
I think ethics and morality, it can still be a strength that you have, but it depends on how you use it for and what your motives are.
Yeah.
You know, some of the best con men in the world are great communicators. I guess they would be either an eye or whatever, but
Yeah.
they use it to take as
Yeah,
opposed
well, it's
to-
like, there's that movie, based on a true story of Leonardo DiCaprio, we were just talking about, say that Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah, exactly.
Where he was a excellent fraudster.
Yeah.
And like so good that the FBI hired him
Yeah.
to like be able to like redo their whole fraud system. He was so good at, so like, you use it for bad here, but as a strength, then you use a strength for good.
Yeah, how many times over the years as law enforcement that I've either said out loud or thought, if you just use your skills to do good as opposed to what you were doing,
Yeah.
you know, you can get somewhere, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean they're not a strength, they just chose not to use it in a positive manner.
That's great.
I think it all boils into self-accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of holding somebody else accountable, you have to look at yourself and say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I think you can add on to that to say, put people around you that one,
Yes.
you know, will tell you if you're kind of going outside, like, hey, maybe you
You
need to
straighten
shift
up.
focus, maybe you're going the wrong way. And then also will, be able to take, like, help with your weaknesses. like
I think
that.
that's good too. That's a good point. Not always just have the yes men in your life to say whatever you're doing is fine, but people who can.
I think be very intentional in your prayer life. You know your strengths and, you know, maybe things that are coming up or things that you're getting ready to do, and just be very intentional about asking God,
Yeah.
to be with you.
That's good. All right, Lincoln, let's go to the next one. I think there's one more. What is one strength you want to develop in the coming weeks?
I'll say patience for me. When you flipped that other one, I was like, oh, that's definitely me. And he looked straight at me again, that's definitely you. I know I'm very impatient. It's something I definitely need to work on.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun to talk about other people, but now we're asking people to talk about themselves, nobody wants to do it.
So I can tell you what I've been working on for a while, and it was John Maxwell who started it, but it's speaking good things to other people.
Yeah.
And I read an article that said when you come up to somebody within 30 seconds, if you want to have a good connection with somebody, automatically say something good. I noticed you did this, and say something good to them, because so few people actually do that.
Yeah.
But I've been working on that for a long time, and it's a superpower, it turns out. I didn't know, and it makes me feel better about who I am as well.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna keep working on that.
That's good. Encouragement's always a good thing. Yes, sir.
I would like to learn how to do something for the common good of someone else. I just don't know, I don't know the answer to that though.
Okay.
But that's something that I would like to do.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey, you know what though, you do, cause you're the one who put together the whole luncheon thing last week, right?
Oh, yeah, that's.
There you go.
There you go. All right, last chance.
Godlike.
Be more godlike, Christ-like.
Yeah, I do a lot of things, questionable things. I just post a lot of crazy stuff on Facebook, just to get other people's reactions, cause I don't care what happens kind of guy.
Yeah.
And, but I need to, I don't know, just be more godlike. I just
Yeah.
need to get more around y'all people.
y'all people. I need to be around y'all people too. We all be a little bit more Christ-like every day. One thing I do every night is I tell the teens this all the time. It's like I try to look back on my day and be like, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And what did I fully surrender to God? What did I didn't? What did I mess up? And then how can I get better tomorrow? So I always like to try to replay things. Like, did I do like the Christ-like thing here? And how can I get better? All right, let's go to homework. I know you're all dying for this. All right, so read chapter 8, Developing the Leader Within You, or John Maxwell. It seems like you guys already have all done the DISC assessment, so good job, guys. Already ahead. Facebook group, post an action you're inspired to take after reading the chapter. Next slide. And then complete at least 4 days in your journal. Find another assessment and complete it, and create a list of 5 growth actions you can take as a response to what you learn about yourself. So that'd be one of those other assessments that we talked about tonight, or you can look it up online and do one of those. And then here's a podcast from the Gospel Coalition. This will all be in an email. Do we have any questions? I thought you were raising your hand. Now you're just arthritis. All right, let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for a great time tonight, Lord. Lord, you've given us each gifts. And the best way we can find our gifts are, what are we passionate about? What are the passions you put in our lives? And Lord, I pray that even if we're still trying to find what those passions and gifts are, Lord, that you reveal them to us, and that way we can just dive into what you have for us, God. And this week that we also, if we don't know ourselves well, that we really reflect about who we are, our gifts, our personalities, and everything. Because the only way that we can lead well is if we know how to lead ourselves well, God. So, Lord, help us with that this week, and help us just be a positive influence in someone's life this week, whatever it may be, and continue just to be people that encourage others and love others and show love, grace, and mercy to others. And Lord, we just look to you for all of that, God. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, guys. Thank you guys for coming tonight. Good thing we got AC because it's finally hot outside.
For the record, when I say I do questions things, I just post stupid stuff. I just post dumb stuff